Welcome to Swords and Hammers, where truth comes clothed in tales, and the soul remembers what the mind forgets. Settle in and listen well. The Deep Face, a tale of stone, and the unseen cut. There was a quarry called Stenmark, set into the hills just above the river. And it had two faces. The outer face looked toward the road where carts passed and merchants stopped to judge the stone. The inner face dropped away into shadow, where the cuts were harder and the light arrived only at midday for 1 hour, if the clouds permitted. A man named Keld worked the inner face. He had worked it for 11 years, which is a long time to spend in shadow. He was good at his work. This is worth mentioning, because no one else mentioned it. On the outer face, where the road was, a man named Arvid cut stone. Arvid was capable, though perhaps not quite so precise as Keld. But precision is difficult to judge from a distance, and no one who mattered ever walked down to the inner face to compare. The master of the quarry was a man named Brosa, who lived 3 days' ride to the south and visited twice each year. When he came, he walked the outer face with Arvid and examined the cuts. Arvid's stones were always laid out cleanly for inspection. Brosa would nod and say the quarry was in good order. He did not descend to the inner face, or if he did, Keld never witnessed it. This arrangement continued for several years, and Keld did not complain, because he was not the sort of man who complained. He simply began, by degrees so small he did not notice them himself, to care less. A stone that should have been squared to 4 fingers' width was squared to 5. A cut that required 3 passes of the chisel received 2. The difference was invisible to anyone who was not a stonecutter, and no one who visited the quarry was. Keld told himself that this was reasonable. A man who labors in shadow cannot be expected to hold himself to the same standard as a man who labors in the light. This seemed to him not only sensible but obvious, and he was surprised he had not arrived at it sooner. He began to finish early and sit against the quarry wall, eating his bread and watching the dust settle in the still air. The bread tasted better than it had in years. He considered that he had been a fool for a long time, grinding himself to powder for a master who did not look and a world that did not care. He pitied his younger self, the way a man pities a dog that guards a house. No one intends to rob. In the 11th year of Keld's work, a commission came from the city for foundation stone. Foundation stone must bear the full weight of everything built above it. It is tested by the mason's square and hammer before it is laid, and any stone that rings false is broken and discarded. There is no negotiating with a foundation. It holds, or it does not. Arvid's stones from the outer face were examined first and found suitable. The mason approved them without comment. Then the mason turned to the stock from the inner face. The first stone rang true when struck. It was from the early years. The second rang true also. The third stone, when the hammer fell, gave a dull, flat sound that even Keld recognized. The mason turned it over and found the edge was 5 fingers wide, where 4 had been required. She set it aside, without expression. The 4th was the same, and the 5th, and the 6th. The mason, whose name was Gerda, and who had no interest in quarry politics, said only that the later stones from the inner face would not serve for foundation work. Whoever had cut them had either lost his skill or his will, and she did not much care which, since the result for the building was identical. Keld stood near enough to hear every word. He said nothing. His face, according to those who were present, did not change. But he sat down on a block of rejected stone and remained there for a considerable time. The dust from the testing still hung in the air. It settled on his hands, on his knees, on the stone beneath him. He looked at his calloused palms. The calluses had outlasted his honesty, which struck him as a fitting detail. Brosa arrived the following week, earlier than expected. He walked the outer face with Arvid, examined the commission stones, and said they were fine. Then Brosa did something he had never done before, or at least something Keld had never seen him do. He descended to the inner face. The path was steep, and the light was poor. Brosa was not a young man. He picked his way down carefully, one hand flat against the rock wall. He stood for a long while, looking at the chisel marks, the stack of finished stone, the pile of rejects the mason had separated. He did not appear angry. He appeared to be confirming something he already knew. "I have seen your work every year," Brosa said. "The early cuts are as fine as anything in this quarry." Keld looked at him. "You never came down." "I came at night," Brosa said, "when the quarry was empty. My knee does not permit this path before others, but I have felt every stone you cut, with my own hands, in the dark, by touch, alone. I know when you stopped caring. I know the season." He said this, the way a man reports that the river flooded in the spring. It was simply a thing that had happened. "The outer stones are for walls," Brosa continued. "They face the weather and the public eye. But the inner stones are for foundations. They bear everything that stands above them. I placed my best cutter on the deepest face, because the deepest face is what holds." Keld understood then that he had been a fool of a particular and devastating kind. Not because his labor had been noticed, though it had. Not because his negligence had been observed, though it had. But because the very hiddenness of his work had been the mark of the master's trust, and he had read it as the proof of the master's indifference. He had mistaken the highest honor for the lowest regard. He had treated the foundation as though it were rubble, and the stones he had carelessly cut, the ones now rejected and broken, could not be uncut. That was the weight of it. Stone does not forgive poor work, and neither does time. Brosa did not dismiss him. This surprised Keld considerably, and he said so. Brosa replied that a man who has cut 9 years of honest stone and 2 years of false may yet cut 30 years of true, provided he grasps what happened and does not forgive himself before the stone does. There was no sentiment in this. It was an observation about rock and men, and the proportions involved, and Keld accepted it as such. He returned to the inner face the following morning, well before dawn. The stone was cold beneath his palms. He squared the first block to 4 fingers exactly, 3 full passes of the chisel, no fewer. No one was present. That was precisely the point. The work was as it had always been, heavy, slow, hidden. But Keld was not as he had been. He checked the edge of the first stone twice before setting it with the others. When the sun crossed the rim of the quarry at midday, he did not stop to watch it. He was occupied with the second pass of the chisel, which could not be interrupted, without cost. The dust rose and settled on his shoulders with each stroke, as it had for 11 years. He did not brush it off. It was, he decided, a kind of proof, and he no longer required anyone else to see it. The foundation would hold, or it would not. He intended that it would. Selah.